Hey guys, welcome back to Hands On channel. Today we're out here at my pond. I just thought it'd be a nice little change of scenery. I'm fixing to actually go out here and catch some bass here in a little while, maybe some crappie. Might even take some home, clean them up and eat them. But you know, as I was just kind of getting my gear together and stuff like that, I started thinking about just you know, how intimidating prepping might seem to somebody that's actually just getting started, especially in 2021 during all of this chaos that we've got going around us right now. I mean, from the vaccinations to the whole Corona-19 or COVID-19, whatever they're calling it now, you know, Beta, Zeta, Delta, all these different things that they're using to basically regenerate the fear that we had last summer. And I would say that it's a precursor to lockdowns, that future lockdowns that are going to be attempted to be implemented across the United States. I don't think all the states will do it, but I think, like last time, many of the most liberal states, the most progressive leaning, communist favoring cities especially, and states will go ahead and lock down as soon as Biden gives the word, or Fauci, or whoever it is that they think they can justify locking down. So all that being said, we could be facing more food shortages and food crises because, you know, if you remember last time, part of the reason that, you know, a lot of the suppliers weren't able to get food to the stores was because, you know, all the businesses have been shut down except for Walmart and, you know, their favorite ones, Lowe's, Home Depot, all the big box stores, they got to stay open. But, you know, the little mom and pops places, they got closed down, and that has caused a chain reaction throughout the economy. Many of those businesses never recovered and never will recover. They're permanently closed because of the lockdowns from 2020. So that's a real shame. And I know a lot of people are struggling right now to make ends meet. I mean, it's a tough time to make money here in the United States of America. So I wanted to talk to you guys about just some basic things and what to do if you're just getting started out, if you're really green into prepping and this is your first go around, you're like, where do I even start? Well, first of all, I would say start with the easiest, cheapest thing that you can start with that's probably going to provide you the most security long term, and that is storing of water. Water storage is going to be essential because the next few things that I'm going to list are going to require water for you to survive. So you're going to want to have a clean drinking water source. And I hate to be like a broken record, but in case you missed the other videos where I've talked about this before, there are many different ways to safely store water above ground, in your house, whatever. You want to keep it in a place that's relatively climate controlled, you know, because water in like plastic bottles and stuff like that can react out in the heat and out in the sun and stuff like that. So you're going to want to be really careful about it. And also have some like different filtering options around in case you have to maybe use rainwater or something like that, like a rainwater catchment system. We've had a video on that in the past. You can go check that out. It's really easy to set up with just some basic stuff that you can get from the hardware store. So secure your water source. If you really want to have security in your water supply source, the best thing would be to have a well. And also, not only a well, have solar panels or a generator, a lockout switch or whatever you call it, one of those switches where you could hook your generator directly up to your well and just run your well. Because if you're the one person in the whole neighborhood that can pump water after the shit hits the fan, people will be knocking your door down to trade you for foods that they can't consume because they didn't think about water. So, I mean, in a world of dry mouths, the guy with the water bottle is the richest guy on the face of the earth. And you need to start looking at food and water as a form of currency. So one of the things I've talked about in the past on some of my past videos regarding water is that, you know, I drink soda pop like a fish. I love Dr. Pepper. I'll never get over that stuff, more than likely until it kills me or whatever, but I love that stuff. It's my coffee. I don't drink coffee. I drink Dr. Pepper. Puts a little pep in my step or whatever, you know, wakes me up in the morning. Addictions aside, every time I drink one of those, not every time, but nine times out of 10, when I drink a Dr. Pepper out of a 2-liter bottle or something like that from the refrigerator at home, I will rinse that container out immediately and then sanitize it later and then fill it up with fresh drinking water. So, and you know, put it back in a closet somewhere where it's out of the sun, it's hidden, it's not going to leak because it's in that 2-liter bottle. You can actually even put those in your freezer, and they're excellent for just throwing in your cooler, or just like out here when I'm out in the woods, you know, when I'm cutting trails, what I'll do is I'll take like a 1-liter bottle and I mix up the sizes I buy depending on how much the store is charging for them at the time. You know, I usually tend to buy the cheaper deal. So if the 1.5 liters are like 99 cents, then I'll stock up on those, and those are perfect for taking out hiking. You can just take a frozen bottle straight out of your freezer and carry it with you all day long, and most of the day it'll be nice and cold for you. So that's just a really, really good thing to have, you know, just for hiking and normal stuff. But if you come into a SHTF situation, you know, where you need to take off, you could easily grab one of those frozen water bottles out of your freezer, and or if the power grid went down, those frozen water bottles would give you some cooling ability much farther after the grid goes down. So it will help keep your frozen stuff frozen for longer by doing that. So I highly recommend doing that. Now, one thing to be aware of and be cautious about is if you can't fill those bottles all the way to the top. I usually fill them about 2/3 of the way up, and then I put them in the freezer, and I've yet to have one bust on me. So just be aware of that. Don't overfill them, or they will bust in your freezer, and then you'll have a big mess and you'll be mad at me. But you should be stocking up on water right now. While water is easy to get, stock it up, because it's very, very hard to handle water and deal with water. I mean, yeah, you see I've got, you know, tens of thousands and thousands of, maybe hundreds of thousands of gallons of water back behind me here. But the problem is it's dirty. I don't know if you can see it from this video or not, but there's some scum like right here along the edges. Now, that's not necessarily going to kill you if you're in a survival situation, but you certainly want to have some way to filter that. You'd probably want, like this pond water, you'd probably want to boil it first and then run it through some sort of a filter. If you don't have a proper like Berkey filter or something like that, or a Life Straw, you could, you know, rig yourself up a rudimentary charcoal filter if you know how to do that. You could use coffee filters, different things like that, to slowly filter that water out, and then you'd have to boil it and all this stuff just so that it'd be safe for you guys to consume. So it's much easier to do that beforehand and just stock up your empty plastic bottles. And, you know, it could be even apple juice and stuff like that. But one thing I'll warn you is a lot of the juices, they retain the flavor into the water. So if that really bothers you, you're not going to want to do that. On the other hand, if you haven't had water or apple juice or anything like that in 6 months, and suddenly you crack that apple juice bottle open and you get that little bit of whiff of apple juice and a little bit of flavoring in your water, it might not necessarily be such a bad thing. So water is key. It's the number one thing. So let's get on to number two. I don't want this video to take too long. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. Again, this is stuff that's for the entry-level people that are just getting their feet wet into prepping. So if I were that guy and I was starting out today with nothing, or gal, if I was that person and I was starting out today with nothing, then I would be looking at heavy investments in dry beans and dry rice. Again, you know, you have to keep that stuff under the right conditions. You can't just, you know, let it set out in the open, or else it'll pick up the moisture from the atmosphere. So you want to seal this stuff off. The little plastic bags that they come in generally aren't good enough. So at very least, you would probably want to get yourself a couple of Rubbermaid totes that are relatively airtight, if not airtight, and then throw all your dry goods in there, and then even throw a couple of those desiccant bags in there, whatever they call it, where it dries it out. You know, that you can get those anywhere. A lot of times I'll save them whenever I buy a new product and it comes with one of those bags. Then you can actually dry those out in the oven and stick them in with your food and stuff like that. Now, of course, not in direct contact with the food, but you can stick them in there. Now, another thing that you can do to prevent bugs and stuff like that from getting to your dry goods, it was really common practice back in the old days to put a little bit of food grade diatomaceous earth in with the beans, in with the rice. You know, if you're afraid to put it directly on there, you could probably figure out a way to put it inside of the container, the Rubbermaid container. You know, and again, start out small. Get yourself, you know, one of the nice big, I don't know how big they are, but like a 10 or 20 gallon Rubbermaid container. Get one of those and just start every week, every paycheck, go down and get beans and rice, beans and rice. You can also throw in some canned goods. That'll help you out, because a lot of times those are really cheap and they have a pretty long shelf life. They don't have as long of a shelf life as dry beans or dry rice, which is almost indefinitely if you keep them in the right conditions, you know. So some other things you might consider are like jars of honey and things like that, you know, you're going to eventually get to a point where you're going to need that little sugar hit. You're going to need a little bit of just something sweet to keep you going. And a little bit of honey can go a long ways. And also there's a lot of different medicinal uses for honey. Back in the day, I believe it was the Egyptians, they used to use honey on their open wounds. So if you got a wound, you know, you're out in the woods or whatever, and you get poked, or God forbid you get stabbed or you get a gunshot in this crazy world we're living in right now. I mean, is it the best thing in the world? No, but it's better than nothing. So if you got into a situation where you had to smear some honey on your open wound, it might keep you from getting infected and getting gangrene and dying. Because I'm imagining a situation where you can't go to the hospital. You know, you're out here, you're on your own. And speaking of that, we've kind of covered the basics. So if you've got beans and rice and water and some canned goods, you know, I mean, if you like ramen noodles, buy ramen noodles. Try to buy stuff that you're going to consume anyways, because it's a hedge against inflation. So if you lock things in at today's prices, more than likely those prices aren't going down, they're going up. That's been the trend in my lifetime. Nothing has come down really. Everything has gone up. So because of that, plan for that to be the situation. You know, 5 years from now, that bag of beans is going to cost you more, or that bag of rice will cost you more than it did today. So it's sort of a hedge against inflation, but mainly it's a SHTF survival plan to where you and your family won't starve to death. Again, we're not going to be eating filet mignons and T-bone steaks or anything like that during the shit hits the fan situation. If you do have those in your freezer and the power grid goes down, you're going to have to eat those right away, because within a short time, probably a couple of days, unless you can find a way to keep that freezer going, within a couple of days, all that food inside of that freezer is going to be spoiled. So, you know, have a plan for that. If you already have a freezer full of food, you're probably ahead of the game, and you've probably already thought about having a backup power supply, like a backup battery bank or a generator, or a combination of all of the above and solar, whatever you can swing. But again, I'm trying to keep this simple for people that are just getting into this. So next up on the list here, probably one of the most important things, and it's along the lines of what we were just talking about, is that you're going to want an emergency SHTF medical kit to do basic stuff. So you need to look around at your own family situation. You know, if you're one that's prone to get heartburn and stuff like that, you know, from very mild foods, then you probably need to make sure you've got plenty of antacid and stuff like that to help you get through the hard times. Headaches, you know, obviously get some aspirin, some ibuprofen. Not too long ago, I had a really bad toothache before I could go to the dentist. I was just having a real bad toothache. It was real cold sensitive and it was hurting me. And of course, since then I got it fixed. But before I could go to the dentist, there was like a big lapse. I couldn't go because, you know, the COVID had everything on back order basically, or backlogged, to where I couldn't go to the dentist for like a month, and I had to suffer through this pain. Well, my wife was like, go in there and take like, I don't remember how many she said. She said take like 4 ibuprofens, and I don't like to take pills. I don't at all. And so when I do take them, I tend to take half as many as she recommends, you know. So I went in there and took 2 ibuprofens, and boom, it knocked out all my pain. And I was able to carry on like that for a month. I was able to get by for a month. It wasn't, you know, perfect. It didn't perfectly dull all my pain or anything, but, you know, as a person that doesn't take pills very often, that was very surprising to me that a low-grade, over-the-counter medication like that was able to knock out a pretty serious pain that I was having. So make sure you have medicines that you're going to need for your specific needs at home. You know, if you're a person that has asthma, well, you better have plenty of extra inhalers and whatever else you guys that have asthma have to go through, you know. And I know we've talked about this before. It's very difficult to get your doctor on board with this plan. So if you have specific needs that are prescription only drugs, I don't know what to tell you. Talk to your doctor about that. There's a possibility that they might be able to hook you up and get you like a couple of extra prescriptions or whatever, so that you could have some storage in your medicine cabinet in case you can't get to the doctor in the future. So, you know, we talked a little bit about the generators for keeping your stuff going. If you don't have a generator, you know, I get it. It's overwhelming right now. It's hard to get all this stuff going. You could look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace possibly and find yourself a good deal on an inexpensive generator. I've done videos in the past on the little Harbor Freight tailgater, and if you use that within its limits, it's actually a pretty good little generator. It's fairly quiet. It's 2-stroke, so it's low maintenance. There's not a lot to do to it as far as changing oil and stuff like that. Now, you get what, you know, you pay for to a degree. It doesn't produce a whole bunch of power. You know, I think it's 1,000 watts. So that's enough to like run some light bulbs and recharge a few things, those sorts of things. It's not going to power your whole house or run your well. So you're going to have to come up with other alternative sources for those kinds of things. But the main intention of this video is to get new people started into this. And again, I know it's intimidating when you watch these people that show their entire storehouse full that they've been working on for the last 10 years, and they've got multicolored buckets and all this different stuff, you know, and they seem very advanced and sophisticated, and that's because they are. They have been doing this for, you know, decades, a lot of these people on YouTube. So don't be intimidated by what you see. Start small. Like I said, get a single Rubbermaid tote and start filling that thing up with dry food. You know, if you don't like beans and rice, or you're worried about the flatulence, you know, that's going to definitely come from eating a straight bean and rice diet, then, you know, mix in some other stuff like that. It's probably a good idea to throw some Spam in there and some other canned meats that they might sound kind of gross right now, like Vienna sausages and stuff like that. They're not my favorite thing to eat. But if you haven't had meat in days and days or weeks and weeks, and suddenly you bust open some Spam, let me tell you what, that's going to taste like a T-bone steak. So especially if you can pull it off where you can do like some Spam and eggs or something like that, or a Spam burger or something, oh man, there ain't nothing better. Put a little mustard on that if you got it, you know. So again, guys, we're not talking about living in the lap of luxury here. We're talking about surviving. On the other side of things, you know, the defense side of things, you need to have a way to defend yourself from potential marauders and, you know, thieves and, you know, who knows, BLM, Antifa, SJWs, all the people that aren't prepping up, they're going to be coming for your stuff. So you need to have a way to defend yourself from that, you know, and it's hard right now to get into firearms, although it's not impossible. So if you're really persistent about it, you should be able to find the basics that what you need, you know, like 9mm, a 22, a 12 gauge, all of those things, or one of those things. Any one of those things would be better than nothing. So I highly advise you to get into firearms if you're not already. There's a whole host of information out there, some on YouTube, some on other sites, where you can learn all about the firearm, how it functions, you know, if it's got good reviews, that sort of thing, how much the ammo is. These are all factors to consider, you know. But we've seen recently down in South Africa that people that had guns were able to fend off the majority of the mobs. Was it 100% perfect? No, because South Africa has some crazy ass rules where I think you're only allowed to have like 200 rounds of ammo or something like that. Unbelievable. So celebrate your Second Amendment. Go out and get yourself a firearm of some kind. If you're uncomfortable with firearms, you know, I mean, I guess you could get a pellet gun, or maybe a crossbow, or a compound bow, those sorts of things. But look into some way to be able to, you know, for one thing, to be able to hide your stuff so that people, when they do break in eventually, they won't be able to find your stuff immediately. And two, if you're there and you're able to, you know, intervene in that situation, that you'll be able to defend your preps, because I think we're rapidly approaching that time, guys. We're seeing signs that society is cracking all around us. The Americans have never been more divided than they are right now since the Civil War. And maybe we're more divided now than we were then, because as somebody pointed out, this is not like the Cold War, where we have a definite enemy that we can point our finger at. These people that are the enemy of freedom, you could have walked past them in the store earlier today, or they might be getting gas at the gas station over there right next to you, or whatever. I mean, they're all around us, and they've been corrupted intentionally to hate traditionalism and the United States of America as founded. So anyways, guys, I hope you go out and heed my warning and stock up now and not be intimidated by this process. Just go out, and because let me tell you, Bruce Willis ain't coming to save you. Arnold Schwarzenegger ain't coming to save you during this catastrophe. You're going to have to put your bootstraps on and pull your bootstraps up and save your own ass. And I hope you'll do that. I don't want to see people dying in the streets from starvation in the future, but I think we are going to see that. And that's a lot more scary of a prospect than the worst day of the COVID-19. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Let me know in the comments, is there something else that new preppers should immediately go out and do and get? I was just trying to think of the basics. If I was getting my toe wet into prepping right now, some of the cheaper ways to go about doing that and put a lot of food in your storage. So anyways, guys, as I've said before, I stand for liberty, and I hope you do too. And until then, we'll see you next time. I'm gonna go catch a fish. Well guys, we just pulled a monster out of here. That is a bob right there, big old bass. Look at that thing. Damn. I wish I could get it in frame. That's the best I could do. Let me throw it down here on the bag. You can see my bag has a 12-inch measure on it there. That's a big old fish. I bet that at least go 4 pound. I don't have my scale on me, but you can see he's quite a bit longer than my bag. That is a big old bass. Let me grab a picture. All right, guys, this is the biggest bass I've caught out of my pond here. Let's turn him loose. There he goes. Oh man, that was awesome, guys. Totally awesome.